Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Hanson. So today I'm going to show you guys how to handle permissions for commands for your Discord bots. So this is a very simple example, but it works really well in my opinion. And the idea is basically in our command handler, before we actually execute the command's run function, we're going to check the permissions. Now I have a simple project over here that has a command handler. You can use whatever command handler you want. Okay, it should work the same way, but you guys should understand the actual concept. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna set up what's called a permission guard. Now this, you can call this whatever you want. It's just, name that I just made up. And we're gonna go ahead and create a class. So permission guard.js. And what I want to do is, let me do this class permission guard. And this is going to be a class that our base command file. So this is a Slappy project in case you guys didn't know. But what we want to do here is we want to create another property and pass another parameter. So we'll call this guard, and then this dot guard or this dot permissions equal guard. Actually, I'm just gonna name this permissions. Screw it, who cares? There we go. So now this permissions is going to be an instance of permission guard. And now let's go inside the permission guard class and let's create a constructor. And it's going to take in two parameters. It's going to take in the array of permissions and it's going to take in required. Okay, so permissions is basically an array. It's an array of all of the permission flags that the user needs in order to run the command. And required is just going to be a boolean. So it just tells us whether or not the command requires permissions or not. So since we're using JavaScript, we'll just do this.permissions equals permissions, this.required equals required. Perfect. Now, the next thing that we want to do is we want to create a function that's going to take care of checking the permissions for us. So this is going to be fairly simple. We're going to create an instance method or function called check permissions. Okay, or we can do check. It's called check. And this is going to take in an array of permission flags, but the permission flags are going to be the member's permission, the person that's trying to use the command. We're going to take in their permissions. So member permissions. Okay, and this is going to basically be a boolean. It's going to return a boolean. Now let me actually open up the Discord.js documentation and let me show you what permission flags are so you guys are aware, so we're on the same page. So if we go over to permissions, and if you go to flags, so this is basically the array that I'm talking about. We're going to have an array of all of these flags. So what I'm going to do is inside this check function, we want to make sure that the user has permissions, but this is all based on implementation because it's either you want the user to have every single one of those permissions or if they have at least one of those permissions. Now for this case, I'm going to make it so that they need to have all of those permissions in order to use the command. If they are missing at least one of them, they cannot use it. So what we're going to do is we're going to return and we're going to reference this dot permissions. Now this is an array. So there's a method called every, and what we want to do is for every single element that's inside the array, this dot permissions array, we want to make sure that that element is also inside the member permissions array. So we want to make sure that for every permission that is inside that permissions array for a command, we want to make sure that the member actually has the permission. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. So what we're going to do is we're going to reference member.permissions and we're going to check to see if it includes permission. And now this is going to return a boolean value, so true or false. So essentially, like I said, we're just checking to see if the member has every single permission that we had created for the permission guard for the command. And that's it. Okay, that's all it is. So now that we have our permission guard and we had passed this in as a parameter for the constructor. So let me actually export permission guard and we're going to go inside the test command. Oops, test. And we're going to go ahead and import permission guard. So const permission guard equals require utils permission guard. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and do new permission guard and we're going to pass in all of our permissions. So we're going to pass in kick members and then ban members, and then we will pass in true. So for this command, the permissions are required. Okay, cool. So obviously our command is still going to work because we haven't actually modified our message.js file yet. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to first check to see if they are using a command. So we're going to check to see if message.content starts with prefix. And what we're going to do next is we're going to go ahead and reference the command's permission guard. Because remember, we have right over here base command, which is the superclass of all of our command files. Okay, test command extends base command, so it's going to inherit this permissions field. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and first check to see. Let me actually do this. Let me comment this out. We're going to check to see if command is truthy and command dot permissions. Actually, you know what I could do? I think instead what I'm going to do, this is going to kind of be pretty whack. What I'm going to do instead is inside the permission guard, instead of passing required, we'll just say this. If it's null, then that means they did not set permissions for that command. So that means they probably don't want permissions for it. Okay. So I think that'll be better. Okay, that'll probably be better. So if it's null, then that means there's no permissions that are required. Okay. So let me do this. So if command and command.permissions, so if command.permissions is truthy, that means permissions are set. And what we need to do is we need to check to see if the permissions are valid. So if command.permissions, so we're referencing the permission guard instance, and we want to call the check function. So check, and we want to pass in member permissions. How do we do that though? So we're going to pass in the array of permission flags. To do that, there's a method called toArray on the permissions object, okay? So to get the permissions object, we're going to pass in message.member.permissions.toArray. I know it's pretty ugly, but you can probably use like bit fields, I think. But we're going to do it like this for now. So if this is true, then they can use the command. So command.run client message command args. Now, if this is false, we're going to say message.channel.send. If command is truthy, but command.permissions is falsy, so if it's null or undefined, okay, if it's anything that results to falsy, we're going to say else if command, and we want to make sure command is truthy, and we're going to check to see if command, if command.permissions is not falsy, or is not truthy, sorry. Okay, so basically this part is going to ensure that command is truthy. So if there's an actual valid command that's found in the map, and we're also checking to see if command.permissions is also not present, which means that there are no permissions required, then we're going to go ahead and execute the command as well. And if both of these cases fail, that means the command doesn't exist. So let's actually test this out now. All right, so the bot is logged in right now. So let me go ahead and do this test. So the command works. Okay, the command works now. My other account has permissions right now. I'm going to get rid of it. And I'm going to go ahead and do the test command. So it says you don't have permissions to run this command. Now, if I give it the verified role again, notice how the verified role actually has these permissions. Let me get rid of that. And let me go ahead and give it the verified role. So test. Oh, that was me, sorry. Other account. Okay, you don't have permission to run this command. Now, if I give it, let's give it kick members, and let's try again. It's not going to work. Let's give it band members with kick members, or let's do band members first, and then we'll do both. So test doesn't work. Okay, so let's go back here. Let's give it both permissions, and let's try it now. Test. Now it works. If I try to use a different command, it's not going to work, right? Nothing happens. If I try to, I think that's it. Okay, so what if I did this? What if I did this? Let's go back to here, and let's actually just ignore this whole thing. Let's pass in nothing. Okay, by default, it's just going to be null. Okay, so let me go ahead and do this. So, whoops, what's going on? Oh, look, the bot has logged in. Okay, test. Okay, so it works, but even if I get rid of the role with permissions, it's still going to work. Okay, because that's because we turned off the permissions. Or not turned off, but we removed the permissions. And yeah, let me show you guys one more thing real quick. So let me actually show you what message.member.permissions.toArray looks like. Just so you guys are aware of what I'm actually doing. I don't want you guys to, not understand what's going on. Let me actually do this. Oh, we turned it back on, the permissions. Okay, so I just gave myself permissions. Let's go ahead and test this out. So test. So look at what it looks like. We have all of these permissions right over here, but the only ones that we care about are kick members and band members. So what's going on with this function is that it's going through every single permission that is in the commands array. So right over here, it's going through every single permission, and we're checking to see if that permission is inside this array, which is the member's permission. I hope that makes sense, because this is very important to understand, okay? And you can see that we have kick members and we have ban members. I'm pretty sure there's an easier way to do this with bit fields. I haven't tested it out yet, but I know that there's probably an easier way to do it. If any of you guys can come up with something, definitely let me know in the comments. So that's pretty much it for this simple permission guard, okay? I can create all of the commands that I want to, and I can set the permissions, okay, and I can modify the permissions however I want to. But as long as I have those permissions, then I can use the command. If I don't have those permissions, then I cannot use those commands. So hopefully this little tutorial made sense for you guys. If you guys are not using Slappy, I would recommend you use it. It's very easy to use. If you're using a custom command handler that uses object literals instead of classes, the concept still works the same way. You would just need to have this one function that checks everything for you. Okay, that's literally all you have to do. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So hopefully this made sense. And I'll see you guys in my next video. Peace.